All right, it's 2 o'clock. We're ready to start. Before we get started, if Representative Williams, you'd lead us in a moment of prayer.
Yeah, let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for all your many blessings of life. Thank you for this beautiful sunshine weather we have today, and we ask you to be with us today and help us to do things that are pleasing in your sight. We pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Okay, we've got 5 bills to discuss today, and it could end up being very lengthy. We have 2 hours in a room. I hope we don't have to take all that, but we do have 2 hours in a room. First bill we're going to hear today is Senate Bill 55. Is Senator Huffstedler here? Maybe. Okay. Is Senator Harper here today? Does anyone know how to get in touch with any of those people?
I can contact Macy. I can contact Macy and have her.
Yeah, we sent out stuff to all the senators.
Yes. We do have somebody that can speak to it.
Do we have anyone here that can speak to either one of those bills? Okay, we've got. Okay. All right, I tell you what, we'll wait on them and see if we can get them here pretty quick. Chairman Black, you ready to talk about Senate Bill 117? Okay.
My calendar has 4:15.
Okay, come ahead, Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the committee have the sub?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
That should be LC 43-1326S. What we're working from.
Okay. This bill is pretty simple. If you look at the original, that's what I introduced last year, and got it over to the Rules Committee. Got held up over there, but we have a number of old statutes on the book that allows people to buy into the teachers' retirement system at less than full actuarial value. And so the original I introduced, it was just said that no person would be allowed to buy into a state retirement system at less than full actuarial values. After we dropped the thing, I thought it would probably be a little bit more legally correct to have legislative council go back and go through the code and pull out all of these different provisions that allow folks to buy into the retirement system and pay less than full actuarial cost. And so the sub is his work. He didn't have time to get it done before we passed it out in the Senate, so I told him we'd let you folks over here in the House pass the more legally correct bill. But you can read through that, and you will find some of these situations that allow people to buy in at some pretty good bargains. Others, they buy in and then it's at I'll say a discount, but it's still below full actuarial cost. I asked our executive director of the teachers' retirement system, how much did that cost us last year by not having this enacted? And of course, he couldn't give a real accurate figure without spending a whole lot of money getting actuaries run. But his estimate that this was probably maybe $30 million that it cost us last year. This is money that we can save for the retirement system just by enacting this bill. I'll entertain any questions that we might have at this time.
Okay, Representative Tarvin.
Thanks, Senator Black. I just want to make sure now, you're saying y'all sent this to the House to fix it? I mean, y'all didn't
That's
do it
right.
right, and you said, we appreciate that. We appreciate your intelligence and knowledge.
Well,
Thank you.
like I said. I know how to take advantage of good talent.
Do I have anyone else that has a question? If not, I've got a comment on this. I've been on this committee this is my 15th year, and we've had different groups that have asked to come into different retirement systems, and since I've been here, I don't know of any group that's come in that didn't have to pay full actuarial value from a bill that came out of this retirement committee. So I personally think it's a good bill that we go through, and we find that we have people that want to come in for different reasons, but having them pay full actuarial cost is the only way to go. I will. All right, Representative Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't see any place in here where we actually define what full actuarial cost is. Is that needed, or am I overlooking it? Or is it
well,
elsewhere? He's
learned
elsewhere
attorney.
in code as what he's looking up right now.
I believe it is defined in the Chapter 20, the Public Retirement System Standards, but that would not apply to the whole piece. Let me check Chapter 1. I'm assuming maybe the state auditor or one of the systems could help out with is there a generally accepted understanding of what does full actuarial cost mean, and how is that handled when you do get that request?
I'll give you a dirt road definition. It's what the actuaries for the teacher retirement system say it is.
Well, and I think I'm correct on this, that they go out 20 years to look at what the total cost of that. Would that be right, Buster? Would that be close to it?
I'm going to defer to Jim, but probably be equivalent to at least 1 year's annuity payment for our payout.
Okay, all right, all right.
The way I would look at it is basically doing a valuation of the cost that's in question, so we would use the same assumptions as used in the annual actuarial evaluation. And we just look at it from that standpoint. So adding X amount of service is going to change the liability profile of the system by some amount, and that amount's determined using the same methodology we would use in the annual actuarial evaluation.
Did y'all get all that?
If you give me a whiteboard, I can sketch it out.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Representative Laricchia.
I'd just like to make a motion to pass.
We have a motion and a second. Now, do we have any other comments on the bill? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 117, if you would raise your hand. Oh, I'm not voting. Forget about that. Those opposed, raise your hand. Okay, the ayes have it. All right, Chairman Black, you go to Rules Committee. Maybe
Thank you,
tomorrow
sir.
if we can get it on there quick enough for you. Thank you. Senator Huffsattler.
Yeah, I assume this was my assistant that has it wrong on my phone because everybody else got the memo except me, I guess. So I think she transposed the digit. This bill is Senate Bill 55 is at the request of the employee retirement system that wanted to give employees another option that would like an annuity at the end where they were guaranteed a payment. And, you know, there's going to be winners and losers in this, but some people find security in having that payment. This has been certified by the State Fiscal Office as a non-fiscal bill since it should not take revenue away from the system. That's the short version of it, and I'm sure the department's here if any questions I can answer.
Jim, you're not down to speak on this. Could you come up and speak to us about this bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the current tier of the ERS, as you all know, has both a defined benefit and defined contribution 401k portion involved. And of course, the defined benefit portion pays a benefit for a member's life. The question is, how do they manage their 401k money when they get to retirement in a way that will provide them income throughout their retirement and hopefully not let them run out of money, because that is a danger with a 401k plan. What many members do is go into the private markets and buy some form of an annuity product from, an insurance company. What we want to allow them to do is annuitize their 401k money using the pension plan assumptions, and the pension plan is kind of the platform for which to do that. So once again, we'd be using mostly the same assumptions that we use for the actuarial calculations in the pension plan to convert a lump sum of 401k money into a guaranteed lifetime benefit. As Chairman Huffstetler implied, that does mean that some people will win and some people will lose. Depends on individual mortality rates, but actuaries can do a pretty good job of predicting mortality for a large enough group of people, and that's what we're going to be relying on in doing this.
Okay, will you answer a question?
Absolutely.
Representative Kirby.
Is there any extra additional tax liability on the individuals on interest earned that goes into the annuity plan or not?
So what we're going to do is actually one change to the way that we're going to do the calculations is to use a lower interest rate for the conversion of the lump sums into the annuity amounts. And the purpose of that would be to build in a little bit of a cushion for the pension plan, so that so we'll have a certain investment return assumption for the plan overall for the defined benefit portion, and a lower investment return assumption for the guaranteed annuity part, so that in those years when the plan doesn't meet its investment targets, the annuity portion of this, which is essentially a liability that we are bringing into the system, would not be as impacted by these particular purchases. We're trying to mitigate that particular risk.
What about to the individual contributor? Do they have any tax burden that's added if they take money and now put it into the annuity?
No, they don't. You're essentially doing a rollover from one qualified plan to another, so it's still all tax deferred in the same manner.
Okay.
Once they take it out, they're taxed at that time.
Correct. It's as ordinary income.
Do I have any other questions? All right, what is the will of the committee?
Do pass.
All right, we have a move to pass. Have several seconds. Are there any other questions or comments about the bill from the committee? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, if you would, raise your hand. Any opposed, like sign? Okay, Senator, who are you going to get to carry this for you here?
No, and who did we have? Yeah, let me get with you on that. We had one, but I
Okay,
didn't have
all
a
right.
number. Actually, I was didn't know about the hearing till today, but I appreciate you hearing it so quickly.
Okay, all right. Is Chairman Black still in here? Who are you going to get to carry 117? Okay, all right. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Chairman Harper.
Okay, all right, perfect. Afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you. Sorry I wasn't standing on my pedestal in the back so you could see me. I apologize.
There was a big
I'll make
post right here.
sure to bring my step stool next time. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and my first trip over to a full House committee this session. So good to be with you, Mr. Chairman. And so Senate Bill 73 is a simple bill, as we normally say around here. As many of you are aware, I believe it was last year, we did a $5 fee on pretrial diversions in regards to getting additional funds for the Peace Officer Annuity and Benefit Fund. What this bill simply does is allows the clerk of courts to send that $5 directly to POAB. That's all it does. It is obviously a non-fiscal bill as certified by the state auditor, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Does anyone have a question? Representative LaRicchia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Harper, we appreciate you bringing this back and talking to us about it. Just wanted to say that I look forward to all the help you're going to give me on House Bill 447. Just a little simple bill that we're bringing over there that I understand you may be reading carefully and have conversation about. So just really want to thank you in advance publicly for all the cooperation you're going to provide on that.
I look forward to working with my good friend and perfecting his legislation on the Senate side.
I like to remind folks that he is my state senator and I can vote for him, but he cannot vote for me.
We just try to fix all the mess the House sends us now and then. But I got a bunch of good bills in my committee, though, Mr. Chairman, so we're going to work through those.
Representative Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed you didn't expand. We've been talking a lot about expanding the police officer benefit annuity, and you didn't choose to add it in here. That would be a good vehicle to
well,
do it, wouldn't it?
Well, so to do that, obviously it would be have fiscal implications, which would cause the bill to have to lay over till next year. This is a simple clerical fix. I will say, however, Senator Robertson and myself are in the process of crafting legislation to hopefully provide some additional sources for POAB to bring the POAB fund in line with the firefighter fund, which is something we've been trying to work on for the last couple of years. Obviously, we wanted this $5 fee to go into effect. That way we could see what the results of this were. But we're in the process of drafting some legislation now that we're planning to drop before the end of session, and hopefully working with Chairman Black over the interim and getting that sent to a study and coming back next year to try to work on that issue. So we are still working on that. This is just the clerical piece, and hopefully we can work on the heavy lift next session. So.
Well, good. We appreciate it and look forward to working with you on that one.
Yes, sir. Same to you.
Any other questions for the sponsor? Do we have anybody signed up for that one? Representative LaRicchia.
Move do pass.
As long as that's not trying to buy me off, Mr. Chairman, I'll be okay with that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do I have any other comments about the bill? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senate Bill 73, even with its limitations, if you would raise your hand. All opposed, like sign. All right, congratulations.
I believe Representative Green's going to handle this for me on your side, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. For the two senators that were wanting to get with me about a sponsor for their bills so far, if we don't have a sponsor when we leave, we can't report it out. So the sooner you have a sponsor, the better off you'll be on that. Okay, Chairman Black, I need you to come and explain Senate Bill 176.
Mr. Chairman, I left in such a haste to try to be here on time, but I didn't have time to get a copy of this. So is this the ERS bill or the TRS bill?
ERS.
This is the ERS bill. Both of these bills, I called them in one meeting, I called them double first cousins. And I was told not to do that. That was two countries, so the next time I called them twins. These bills have to do with bringing people that have retired back on to work 49%. We've got a real challenge with our retirement systems, folks. We're facing something like nearly $30 billion in unfunded liability. And I've been trying to search and find ways that we can put a little bit in here and a little bit there and try to beef up our systems to try to turn the tide on the way we've been headed with our systems. And these bills that have to do with these retirees coming back on, they provide, just like this one provides for people that retired from the ERS, they can come back on and work 49%. And right now, it's a big advantage to the employer because they don't have to contribute to the retirement system, and they don't have to pay in the insurance, the health insurance. For us to hire someone now to give them $1 in gross pay, it's costing the state something like nearly $100.70 when you combine the retirement and the health insurance. It's serious, and so for these employers to bring these people back on, it is a big financial advantage to them. This bill says that if they bring these people back on, they're going to have to contribute to the retirement system, the employer's portion and the employee's portion, and that employee does not earn any additional credible service. Now this puts in about somewhere around, well, for the employees, this retirement system, it's the employer portion, which is 1.25% plus the state's portion, but it's still a financial advantage for the employer because they're not having to cover the insurance, health insurance cost. And this money will just be some extra money going into the retirement plan to help try to enhance the financial position of this retirement system. Any questions?
Do I have anyone that has a question for Chairman Black? I think we got some people that are reading some of the sections here just real quick. I have one while we're waiting on anyone else that might have. Have you talked with any of the department heads about this?
I haven't had any negative response from any of the department heads. I think that was that the other bill with the teachers. I've heard from a lot of school boards.
Okay.
But
all right.
This it's not generated any negative response, and it will. Like I said, this is taking away a financial advantage they have now, but it still leaves them with a financial advantage. It's just not quite as sweet as what they have in play right now.
Any question? I hate to put you on the spot, but Jim, would you like to comment on this, or Kelly, either one?
So from ERS's perspective, we did a little bit of data mining and found that we had 1,365 rehired retirees in the system last year. Total payroll that we paid to those rehired retirees was north of $21 million. So we were talking about essentially what would be about 26% of that number is what we would expect to receive in contributions, just to give you some idea of the scale of what we're talking about. Obviously, we have some quite large agencies. The agency that had the most had something like 90 or 95 rehired retirees. So for some, there would be a noticeable impact, I would say.
So just so that the committee understands, the rehires are hired. They don't pay into the retirement system, nor does the employer pay into the retirement system. So in essence, they're taking the place of someone else that could be a full-time hire maybe, or two of them are taking the place of a full-time hire that would be paying into the system.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a trade-off, right? So with a regular employee like myself, yes, there's a payment made on my behalf. I'm also accruing a benefit. There's additional liability the longer that I am employed. For the rehired retirees, that liability is not being accrued. They continue to receive their retirement benefit up until the point where they work at least half-time for the year. So in the way we measure it is 1,040 hours, at which point we suspend their benefit for the rest of the calendar year. So the question is, you know, in this particular case, with his proposal, we would be receiving a contribution without a commensurate liability also coming into the plan. So it would be a benefit to the plan.
Okay. Anybody have any questions now? Okay. Who's number 10?
Me.
Okay.
So explain to us, you said they work part of the year at full salary? Is that what you said?
They can work at, you know, whatever hours at whatever salary that they agree to with the employer.
And then what puts them into halftime?
We track hours. So if they work 1,040 hours in a given calendar year, that's what puts them over the barrier to us.
So they're retired. They're not accruing any more toward their entire retirement. They're not.
That's correct.
But the state is paying both the portion that they would if they were accruing their retirement.
That's the way it would work, yes.
And under this bill, the state wouldn't do it, the employer would. Is that right? Is that?
No, the employer is
I understand.
funded by the state, so
Yeah.
There wouldn't be a direct appropriation from the General Assembly. It would come to us through all the employers as they hire. So if a particular employer hires a lot of rehired retirees, they would foot more of the cost.
I have a question, Chairman Black. Is it, and it could be to either one of you, on this, can the employer contract for a different salary than what would normally be paid at that salary?
The bill doesn't, would be an independent agreement.
Okay, all right.
And so,
All right. Representative Romero Lopez.
Lopez Romero, the other way around. But thank you, sir.
Did I get it backwards?
Yes, sir. It's all
I'm
right.
sorry. Excuse me.
Paternal, maternal last name.
Okay.
But just to clarify, it would be only the employer that would be required to pay the contribution, right? Not
that's
the
correct.
Okay. Unless they went over the 1040.
Right,
full-time.
that's current statute. So if you go over the 1040, your benefit will be suspended for the balance of the year.
Okay. That was a clarification I needed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of you indicated that one of the state agencies hires 95% of the retired individuals. No, what?
It was 95 people.
95 people. And is that a large percentage?
No, not particularly. I mean, it's a very large agency that does that. I can't remember which one.
Okay. And you've not had any pushback from any of the department heads?
This bill was introduced last year, and so it's been around. And like I said, it didn't get out of rules last year in the House.
And if I may, one more question.
Go ahead.
So I guess there is a disincentive then for state agencies to hire retirees. Is that right? Because they'll have to pay more into their retirement than if they hired a non-retired person?
There is an incentive for the state agencies to hire these people that want to work, because they get them without having to pay. Right now, they don't have to pay the insurance, health, nor do they have to contribute to the retirement system. And that's a substantial percentage of their labor costs.
So under this bill, they would contribute to the retirement double, or not double, but the employer's portion and the employees, but they wouldn't have to pay for the health insurance. So there is still a small incentive then.
That's still an incentive. It's just not as big.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. What is the will of the committee?
I make a motion we do pass.
All right. We have a motion to pass.
Second.
Have a second. Are there any further comments on Senate Bill 176? Seeing none, all those in favor, if you would, raise your hand. All those opposed, like sign. Bill does pass. Do you have a sponsor for this bill?
I'll get with you and we'll work this out. So
Okay.
it's over.
All right. Well, you might as well just stay there, Chairman Black. Senate Bill 175.
Well, like I said, this is the twin. And if you want some controversy, folks, this is going to get you some emails. The school boards, they don't want to give up that little sweet advantage they have in this thing. And so the response you're going to hear is from school boards and superintendents. The teachers, I have not had any teachers that have had anything to say about this thing. The only thing that I would like to add about this bill is at the time that I drafted it, I thought that we had always done away with the austerity cuts on everything in education, and that the resources that they would not be seriously impacted. I found out that we have restored the austerity cuts to the QBE funding formula, but there's other provisions in the education budget that has not been restored, and the research grant is one of them. There's still some serious austerity cuts put into the research budget, and to add on top of that, the research depend very heavily on these retirees coming in and working part-time. And I spoke with the chairman and suggested that we get an amendment put on this bill that would exempt the research from this. I don't know whether the council's had time to work on that or not, but I would certainly request that that this be addressed before this bill moves forward.
Does anyone have any questions for the chairman? Representative LaRicchia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Black, when you, in the Senate, it looks like it passed overwhelmingly, 52-2 or whatever. What were, I know we've already gotten a lot of emails from some of our teachers and school boards and all on another TRS bill, but what, can you be more specific about the pushback? I guess their complaint being that they've got to contribute
like I said, they've got a tremendous advantage because right now they get these people coming back and they're not having to pay with the 21.14% that goes into the retirement plus the health insurance is 30-something%. I mean, that's a whale of an advantage. And so this right here, they'd have to pay the 6% employees portion plus the 21.14 employers portion would have to go into the retirement system, but that would still give them that big savings on the health insurance. So they're still getting these retirees at less than the cost of a non-retired educator.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Someone earlier used the word disincentivize, and I know that some of our retired educators coming back into our school systems is a huge benefit with the amount of experience and institutional knowledge that they have on working with children and helping with education. But I would hate to see something that would disincentivize these schools to go with these more experienced, long-time educators versus, just maybe hiring new, younger teachers or whatever. And so, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first off, there will still be an incentive for the school boards to hire these retirees and bring them back. It's just not as big an incentive for them to do it. They're still going to do it. Everyone that wants to come back, I have all the confidence in the world, they're going to find a place to bring them back. there is another factor that I haven't mentioned that this, in other words, it needs to be looked at in the line of maybe some of the other legislation that might be at some point in time enacted. If we can do things that would incentivize these teachers to stay on and not retire, that would be a big advantage to the retirement system. Plus, it would keep them in education. But they didn't address in this bill. But that's one of the biggest things we could do to aid the retirement system is get these teachers to stay around a little bit longer. If a teacher makes 30 years and retires, and then they got another teacher makes 40 years and retires, the first teacher gets 60% of their top 2 years. The other one gets 80%. The one that gets 30% costs the retirement system more money. It's an advantage to the retirement system to get them to work 40 years than it is to have them retire at 30.
Representative Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The emails that I've been receiving from the school boards and the teachers are coming primarily from these retired teachers who are working part-time. So the part-time employees wouldn't be receiving, these are positions that are part-time, so they wouldn't be receiving health insurance anyway. Is that right?
They're getting health insurance
through their retirement. That's right.
It was actually the Department of Community Health is providing it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so it's just these retired teachers that are coming back and working will not be affected.
Anyone else have a question? Okay, all right. Representative Tarbin.
So the younger teachers are concerned that they would lose these older experienced teachers. That's what we're hearing. Are they thinking that because the system had to pay that money, they won't hire them? And that's what they're getting at. I guess.
There's a lot of misconception and misunderstanding.
But you're saying that's But you're saying there's still be an incentive.
Well,
it would be less for that. It would be less for that retired person than it would a younger teacher.
Put yourself in the position of a school board. You got a person that wants to come back and work, and you get a big financial advantage. So you jump at it.
I understand.
We changed and passed this law. That person still wants to come back and work. You're going to get a financial advantage. It just ain't as big as what it would be if we don't pass this law. So this is a situation, if you want to do a little something to help the retirement system financially, this will get some more money coming in. And I'm sure the executive director could quote some figures as to how much money this would bring into the retirement system. But it would be a substantial hunk of money.
I guess I was getting around to my question. I have to go way out there and way back. Are there any numbers to show what the difference would be in the two savings, or is there any way we could find that out? You know what I'm on a set situation. Is there any way we can find out what the difference would be in the savings, or
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, could we have Buster come up here?
I'll have him come up. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Come ahead, Buster. He has all these figures memorized, so it's no notes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. First of all, as you know, we have about 127,000 retired educators in the state of Georgia who are drawing a benefit from teachers' retirement. We have approximately 12,000 who choose to return to work. They come back under the provisions that Chairman Black has shared with you. Those people come back to work 49% or less. Some people don't realize also they may come back and work 3 months at full time and then the balance of the year at 49%. Some of these people who I'll report to you who are of the 12,000, some of them may come back under the 66% plus 49%. Some may be only coming back at 20%. So we have tried to take the aggregate of what we believe that the revenue would be generated for the retirement system, and we believe that based last year on an actuarial review that was done by the Georgia Department of Audits, as well as our review of current numbers, and we would estimate $60 million plus, depending on how far that you include in that. I'll give you some examples. Our largest employer, Gwinnett County School System, has roughly 400 people who return to work each year. Under this, Gwinnett County Schools would pick up an additional roughly $4 million that they would pay for the teachers' retirement system. I could show you a couple of other examples. I'm glad the example was brought up of the RESAs. I work for 2 school systems and 1 RESA, so I can give you a little bit of an example based on what they've shared. Certainly many of our RESAs do employ our experienced educators who come back and work and contribute with their expertise and knowledge, and I think our largest RESAs employ about 18 people who would come back at a cost, if they were to be covered under this, would cost them an additional $200,000 for our largest. 2 systems that I'm also familiar with, the smaller system that I worked with, looked at their current numbers this morning. They only employ 3 people who come back to work, 49%. The cost of them would be about $40,000 a year. So very negligible when you look at many of the larger systems. Larger system that I work for has about 45 people who come back to work. We believe that number for them would be about $400,000 a year. So it's somewhat across the board. Certainly it would be revenue that would be coming into the system at about $50 million a year, plus or minus, depending on how far this goes. We do think on the positive side that over time, this would have a downward pressure on employer contribution rates. So in other words, where that 21.14% employer contribution is calculated into the number now, if you actuarially calculate an additional $50 million coming in, the exact number what that may be, I couldn't quote it off the top of my head, but certainly over time that would relieve a little bit of that pressure of that employer contribution rate. Would it be dollar for dollar? I do not have the numbers to back that up, but we certainly think it would be a figure that would relieve the employer contribution rate over time. And I hope, Representative, we've gotten your question answered.
Mr. Evans, will you stand for a question?
Certainly will, sir.
Representative Kirby.
In just some rough math, the example the senator used, somebody working 40 years versus 30 years, looks like that should be about an 8% savings for the lifetime of the retirement. Is that about right?
Mr. Chairman, I would say yes, sir.
Thank you.
Representative LaRicchia.
Is there I'm sorry, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there the possibility of these school systems trying to negotiate lesser pay for those 49% to try to backdoor get them to pay for this policy?
The representative has adequately and appropriately identified a strategy that was used previously when the sunset bill allowing those retirees to come back 100%. The bill was sunset in 2012, I believe, Mr. Chairman. And at that point in time, a lot of the school systems did negotiate, let's say, like a 94% or something less than that 100% of salary. So that strategy has been used in the past, and we have history to show that.
So the answer was yes.
Yes.
Anyone else have a question for Mr. Evans? Well, I've got one. What about these people that contract and are paid with a 1099 at the end of the year? Would they be included in Chairman Black's bill?
As I understand the way the legislation is drafted, yes, they would be included within this. And maybe legislative council could help with that, but we believe that they would be private contractors.
The way it's drafted, it's an employer that directly or indirectly remunerates a beneficiary who's not a contributing member of the retirement system. So directly or indirectly, I think you could take that to mean if the employer is making the payments of wages to this person, they're going to be required to make contributions to the system.
Okay. Anyone else have a question for either Mr. Evans or Chairman Black? All right, we have several people that have signed up to speak on the bill. First is Jimmy Stokes. If you'll tell us who you're with and give you 5 minutes. If you go over that a little bit, that's all right.
Hopefully I won't be over that. I'm Jimmy Stokes. I represent the Georgia Association of Educational Leaders. I'm a retired high school principal, and I've spent a lot of time working with RESAs across this state. I come to you on behalf of the RESAs. Folks, a lot of y'all don't know about the RESAs, but they are the backbone of rural education in Georgia. They don't have nearly as much impact in the metro areas, but in the rural areas, our school systems could not survive without the RESAs. And this, I believe, to be an unintended consequence of this bill, in that the RESAs have to contribute to the 27% for the 49% employees. And as Dr. Evans has already mentioned, in one RESA, Central Savannah River area RESA, it would cost them $200,000. Folks, they don't get that money as an allocation from the state. They would have to get that money from the local systems. And so I am coming to you asking you to exclude the RESA agencies from this bill and to enable them to continue to serve our school systems, particularly in the rural areas, on the limited income that they have. And so I appreciate your consideration, and I thank Chairman Black for bringing this bill. I understand he wants to help the teacher retirement system. We just need more folks like that.
All right. Will you stand for a question?
Yes, sir.
Representative Kirby.
And what high school were you principal of?
I was principal in Monroe Area High School.
Walton Proud, thank you, sir.
Walton County, yes, sir.
All right. Thanks, sir. Next is Margaret Ciccarelli.
Good afternoon. I'm Margaret Ciccarelli from PAGE, the Professional Association of Georgia Educators, representing about 95,000 educators statewide, mostly classroom teachers, but administrators, bus drivers, parapros, and other educators who serve in all sorts of contexts within our schools. We appreciate the ability to weigh in on this legislation and want to echo Jimmy Stokes from Gail's comments about RESAs. Late last week, we started getting a lot of communication from RESA employees. RESAs, particularly in rural Georgia, as Jimmy outlined, are critical for our public education system. And if we could, as the chairman indicated, do something to ensure that this bill does not present a hardship to our regional education service agencies, that would certainly be something we would support. And I do also want to apologize to the chair for not coming to him sooner on this. We just started getting a lot of communication about this late last week. It just kind of blew up. Otherwise, we would have brought it to his attention sooner because we certainly have always respected how well he works with our educators on the TRS system in the past. Thank you.
Does anyone have a question? I've got one.
Yes, sir.
Do y'all have any comments on how it's going to affect local systems?
I've gotten 3 emails, one from Screven, one from Fulton, and then one from the Augusta area from retired educators who have some concerns about that. As with many of the proposals that move through this committee, we wish we could make everybody happy 100% of the time. We certainly understand that those employees are concerned, but we have to balance that with making sure that we're bringing some money back into the TRS system to make sure it's as solvent as possible. We've had a lot of conversation about that throughout this session with various pieces of legislation. So we acknowledge that. I do want you to know that I have gotten 3 such emails, all in the past 5 days, but it has been 3.
Anyone have a question? All right, thank you. Mr. Keith Everson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Keith Everson. I'm Executive Director of Northeast Georgia RESA in Athens, and I'm also President of the RESA Directors Association, so I'm representing the 16 RESAs across the state. We were created by the General Assembly a number of years ago to provide professional learning and other shared services to our districts. We get the majority of our funding to provide those services through the General Assembly. Since 2007, as Senator Black mentioned, we are operating on about 58% of what we were back in 2007. to the amount of about $7 million, what the cuts have been since 2007. So each year we're receiving about $7 million statewide, less than what we were then. The effects of this bill, even though we understand the intent to shore up TRS and we respect Senator Black's work on this, this would be an additional $1.8 million statewide for the RESA network, bringing the austerity cuts total, even though that's not considered an austerity cut, but close to $9 million cuts that we would experience through the enactment of this bill. So we appreciate the work of Senator Black and those of you who are interested in making some concessions to the RESA network.
All right. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Everson? I've got one. Your membership schools, how is the fee that they pay to y'all computed?
It varies from RESA to RESA. We are governed by our boards of control, which are our superintendents, and it depends on what services they want us to provide. At Northeast Georgia RESA, our school systems are 14 districts. They pay $4.50 per student in their districts to be a member of RESA. That is less than the state allocation that we receive. But it varies from RESA to RESA. Most of them are somewhere in that same area, $4.50 per student.
So if the RESAs were not included in this, would y'all have to go up on your per student in order to fund this?
We would either have to pass that along to the school districts or reduce staff or a combination of the two.
Okay. Anyone have any question? Representative Butler, you look like you're ready to mash the button.
Well, I don't know that this is the appropriate time, but I'll ask it.
Okay.
I guess I have two questions. One is, if we were to remove the RESAs from the bill as it's been requested, would that have a negative impact on the rest of the bill? And
I'm not aware of it. Legislative Council? Okay.
so the second question was, if it's not going to negatively impact the bill, could we amend it to do that?
All right, we'll come back to that in just a minute. Anyone else have a question for Mr. Everson? Thank you, sir. Chuck Clay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Small gift today. You can take my name off the list. Save you from having to hear from me at all.
Well, we were so looking forward to that. All right, thank you very much. Do I have anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak on 175? Now's your opportunity right now. All right. Representative Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I had a question, and I'm not sure, but I see at least one good friend from Gwinnett County might be able to answer this for me. We hear a lot about teacher shortages and retirees. This is talking about retirees in Gwinnett County, and that's, I know, not maybe the best example because it's so big, but how many teachers are you missing, and how many retirees do you have? And if retirees couldn't teach, how short would you be then?
Are you referring that to the esteemed David McCluskey? Come on up to the microphone.
Yeah, there are certain teacher shortages in certain categories, Tom, and to break down how this bill would impact us, and we have 688 substitutes, 384 of those are part-time. Our certificated personnel, we have 291, which is 2% of our total certificated employees. Classified, we have 93, which represents 1% of our total classified employees population. Teachers, 195 would be impacted by this as far as our reinvestment back into the teachers' retirement system. 13 counselors, 2 psychologists, 33 assistant principals, 39 instructional supervisors, and 9 curriculum and support folks at the central office. So $4 million for us as far as reinvesting back into the teachers' retirement system. And we appreciate how Chairman Black has brought this to the attention. And of course, our superintendent, Mr. Wilbanks, is chairman of the Teachers Retirement System Board of Directors as well. So,
not that I can do that math in my head as good as I used to, but that's got to be close to 7% of your entire workforce.
well, I don't know about the percentage. It's you know, over 1,500 folks.
Thank you.
And out of that 1,500, how many of those would you be required to pay teacher retirement contributions on? Was that 191?
Well, the total number, I believe, Executive Director Evans said $4 million for us.
Okay.
Really $4,500,000 if you look at it. Let me see if I can pull another. Yes, sir. I appreciate that clarification.
Who said we don't have mathematicians from South Georgia?
Well, we do a little ciphering ourselves, but it's not the new math. I appreciate it, Representative. Thank you.
One other question. Would you have that on your little black pad? How many of those retired educators that you are hiring are taking the place of a full-time teacher?
I do not know that, Mr. Chairman. I'll get you that information.
Okay. Any other questions? Representative Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the proper time, I'd like to make a motion.
Now would be the proper time.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we table Senate Bill 175.
Are you asking to table until next Tuesday so that...
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At our next meeting, to give us time to look at an amendment and to answer some of these questions back to our constituents.
Okay. We have a motion to table until the next scheduled meeting, which is next Tuesday, in order for amendments, changes in the bill to be made. Do I have a second? We have a second. So we have a motion and a second to table. Do I have anyone on the committee that wants to make a comment about this? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to table will raise your hand. All those opposed to the motion to table will raise their hand. Okay. Do I have any other business to come before the committee? I want to thank all the committee members that made it today. It looks good to see everybody here. Appreciate all the people out there in the audience coming. Appreciate the comments that were made. We will have another meeting. For sure it will have 175 on it. I don't know about any other bills, but appreciate the comments. Appreciate the committee. We're adjourned.